G'day, mate. 40 here. So, a lot of commentary in the news about Stormy Daniels and how impressive she is on the witness stand. And that exactly matches the woman that I knew, right? I wrote about Stormy Daniels for many years. I interviewed her in 2003. So she entered the porn industry in 2002. I interviewed her in, I think, early 2003, and then ran into her at many events. And this poised woman is exactly who I remember. Right. This isn't some recent development. This isn't the product of sharp lawyering and superb media training. I mean, this is who Stormy Daniels is. She is very smart, right? She's at least as smart as I am. She's always been poised. So I was interviewing her back in February 14 of 2003, and she was just as poised then. I remember when I first interviewed her, she says to her boyfriend, "Shut up, he can hear you." You know, her boyfriend, husband, Brad Armstrong at the time, was like 10 feet away. And so she was 23 at the time, and she was already poised. So different people have different gifts, and we excel in different situations. So, for example, I'm not just top 1% among interviewers. I'm not just top 0.1% among interviewers. I'm in the top 0.0001% of interviewers. I don't know anyone who's a better interviewer than me. Now, I'm sure there are such people. I just don't know them. And Stormy Daniels was incredibly verbally poised from the time she entered the pornography industry, but well before that. And there are all these glowing articles about her in the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post and the New York Times about how she knew how to dress and how to carry herself and how good she was under cross-examination. But she was the same way back at age 23 when I knew her. I knew her between the ages of 23 and 27, between 2003 and 2007. And I've never seen her rattled. And the other thing that's funny, I see in news reports, like they're amazed that Stormy Daniels is such a successful director and producer in the pornography industry. Directing, writing, and producing pornography are not difficult skills. So to call her out and to praise her for her unusual level of success writing and directing pornographic films is damning her with faint praise. I mean, that's ludicrous. This is not a cognitively demanding profession. So her personal life has always been a disaster. She's on her marriage number 4, I believe. And so who we are in love is who we really are. But you can be really messed up deep inside, as you would expect anyone who's in the porn industry to be. And yet, there will be situations where you will excel, right? There are people who excel in prison, right? There are people who excel in war, right? There are people who excel in times of great crises, right? We all have situations where we're pretty good, but you can't draw much wider conclusions about that. So there are a lot of accusations that Stormy Daniels is just like making up this story for money. And there was one comment I just saw on Twitter, like, Luke, how much do you believe about what Stormy Daniels says about Trump? So I haven't been following the Stormy Daniels story very closely. I haven't been following the porn industry since 2007. But I read some of her memoir, particularly the chapter on Donald Trump. But in my moderate awareness of the things she says about Donald Trump, she strikes me as talking 100% the truth, right? So she never had a reputation for being some major liar, right? She was always a fairly level-headed, verbally impressive woman who always gave out the vibe that she was in control. And she knew how to use her big breasts and her good looks and her blonde hair and her intelligence to get what she wanted, right? Which was money. Now, whatever money she's making from the Donald Trump story, right, is going to be a very stiff price that she's paying, right? Because she has to hire security. It's turned her life upside down. And I kind of get her because I was caught in the iron grip of chronic fatigue syndrome, and I knew there was a way out, but I was staying at my parents' home, and I just knew there was a way out, but I couldn't figure out how. And I just had this conviction: if I just reached enough people, right? If I just formed connections with enough people, that someone would be able to help me out. And that's what happened, right? I started answering a lot of singles ads. I was very lonely, right? I was isolated, but I started answering singles ads, placing singles ads. And I met a woman who knew a great psychiatrist who got me medication that 2/3 restored me to a normal life. But I knew I needed more help, and I just needed to reach more people. And so in 1995, on this quest, how do I reach more people so I can get the help that I need? I read a book on fame, right? How do you become famous? And it said, write a book or give something away. So I decided, I'm going to write a book. So initially I wanted to write a book on how to be a good person. I wanted to build on the teachings of Dennis Prager on how to be a good person. But Dennis Prager said, no, please don't do that. So my second thought was I went through the Barnes & Noble in Westwood looking for topics that I was interested in and see if they'd been done. And I settled on history of sex in film, right? And no one had seemed to have written a book on this topic for 20 years or so. And I thought, oh, this is a vitally compelling topic. I'm going to be able to reach a big audience. And Stormy Daniels, had that same sort of, I think, desperation. Like we were both flawed, traumatized people, socially awkward, trying to make our way in a big, confusing world. And we both thought if we could just develop a large following or, large resources, that we could find the cure for what ails us. And I think that's what was driving Stormy Daniels as well. Now, to some extent, you can get a shortcut, right? You can put yourself out there and winnow through the feedback that you get and find some answers to how to improve your life. But in the end, there's no shortcut, right? It's about coming to peace with yourself that enables you to be at peace with other people and find common interests and develop energy and effectiveness together. And there's no quick shortcut. And so obviously Stormy Daniels, despite the very cool, calm, collective facade she puts out there, there's still a great deal of trauma inside, inability to be at peace with herself, and so an inability to sustain relationships with others. I mean, how would you feel about your daughter being in Stormy Daniels' position, right? Talking to America effectively about her sexual relationship with Donald Trump and promoting her, stripping career at age 45. I remember Nina Hartley into her 50s was making porn and stripping. Like, would you want your sister, your mother, your daughter to be, out there making porn? And it also illustrates that different people have different gifts, right? Men have poles that they're looking for holes to sink into. And almost all men with the opportunity and any chance that they might get away with it will have sex, right? Men have poles, they're looking for holes. And the wise man keeps himself out of the situations where he'll be tempted to sink his pole into an inappropriate hole. And there are many women out there, like Stormy Daniels, who are desperate for some sense of power, right? They've been screwed over by life, and so they're looking to get some sense of power back, and they quickly realize that the most visceral and intense form of power that they can wield is sexual. They can use their sex appeal, right, to extract resources from men, and thereby make themselves feel safer. The most effective way to feel safer is to learn to be at ease with yourself and therefore with other people, and build on connections and build a family and develop a place within a community where you have things in common. But for many